I used to think people only said things like, "My soul won't forget you" in movies. Lines that sounded too heavy, too fragile to belong to ordinary people like me. The kind who fix things for a living and spend most days covered in grease or silence. But then she walked in, and now I know what it means to remember someone you were never supposed to. It was early, barely past 8. The repair shop still smelled of metal dust and last night's rain. The kind of morning that doesn't start with coffee, but with a sigh. She came in holding a radio, one of those old wooden ones with brass knobs and a dial that hummed like nostalgia. "It just stopped," she said. Her voice had that calm steadiness of someone who's learned not to rush the world. She wore a gray coat, half-buttoned, a strand of hair caught on her lip. I remember noticing that before anything else. I wiped my hands on a rag and took the radio from her carefully, like it was something sacred. "I can take a look," I said, trying not to sound too eager. When she smiled, or maybe it wasn't even a smile, just the smallest bend in her mouth, I felt it somewhere low in my chest. The air seemed to pause with her. She looked around the shop, like she was remembering something. "You don't see places like this much anymore," she murmured, tracing her fingers along the counter. Her nails were short, clean. She had the kind of presence that made everything quieter around her. "Yeah," I said. "Guess we're all getting replaced by people who just throw things away." She glanced at me then, properly this time. Her eyes weren't sad exactly, just knowing. "You don't seem like the kind who throws things away." I don't know why that hit me the way it did. Maybe because no one ever said something like that to me before. Maybe because she said it like she'd been waiting to. I wanted to ask her what she meant, but instead I bent over the radio, pretending to inspect it. My hands were steady, my pulse wasn't. "Do you think it can be fixed?" she asked after a pause. "I'll try," I said. "Old things deserve a chance." She gave a soft laugh, quiet, but with weight to it. That's a rare thing to believe in. That silence after, it wasn't awkward exactly. Just charged, like the kind of stillness before thunder. I could feel her watching me, or maybe I just wanted to believe she was. She left the radio and her name on a scrap of paper. Her handwriting was careful, almost old-fashioned. "I'll come by in a few days," she said, pulling her coat tighter as the bell above the door chimed behind her. When she was gone, the room felt different. The rain outside had picked up, tapping against the glass like it was trying to remind me she'd been real. I looked at the radio on the counter, her radio, and felt something I couldn't name yet. I told myself it was just curiosity. But that night, when I closed up shop, her words replayed in my head. "You don't seem like the kind who throws things away." I kept thinking about the way she said it, like she wasn't talking about radios at all. I tried to sleep, but every time I closed my eyes, I could still hear her voice, calm, certain, and the sound of rain on glass that wouldn't stop remembering her. She came back 3 days later, just as the morning light hit the counter in a long gold stripe. I'd been pretending to fix the radio for an hour before she even arrived, though truthfully, it was already fixed. I just didn't want the reason to see her again to end too quickly. The bell above the door chimed, soft and familiar. She stood there, that same gray coat, hair still damp from the rain outside. She looked at me for a moment, as if surprised I was really there, or maybe that she was. "Is it ready?" she asked. "Almost," I lied. She smiled faintly, the kind of smile that doesn't reach the eyes but tries to. "You take your time with things, don't you?" "Only the ones that matter," I said before I could stop myself. That made her pause. She glanced down, then tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "That's dangerous," she murmured, almost to herself. We worked in near silence after that, me tinkering with the open radio, her sitting on the stool near the counter, watching. Every so often, she'd ask a small question, about the wires, about the sound. Her voice was careful, as if she didn't want to disturb something fragile between us. I noticed her hands, how she rested them together, thumb tracing her ring finger absent-mindedly. There was no ring, though the gesture suggested there once had been. The light caught the faint mark where it used to be. "You've done this long?" she asked. "All my life, pretty much," I said. "My dad used to fix watches. Guess it's in the blood." She smiled, softer now. "Watches, radios, people who fix things are rare. Everyone else just replaces them." It was the second time she'd said something like that, and it felt heavier this time, as if she wasn't talking about objects at all. She leaned forward slightly, her elbows on the counter, her eyes tracing the wires I pretended to adjust. Up close, I could see the faint lines near her eyes, not the kind that come from age, but from years of staying quiet when she wanted to speak. "You look tired," I said quietly, not even sure why. She blinked, almost startled. "Do I?" I nodded. "Yeah, not in a bad way. Just like someone who's been carrying too much." Her lips parted as if to answer, but she didn't. She looked away, gaze fixed on the rain sliding down the window. Some things get heavy when you hold them alone too long. I didn't know what to say to that. The sound of the rain filled the silence. I pretended to test the radio's dial, though my hands had stopped moving. When she finally stood to leave, I handed her the radio, the hum inside restored, the static gone. She took it gently, her fingers brushing mine, just for a second. "Thank you," she said, her voice quiet but steadier than before. "You didn't just fix it. You made it remember." I almost laughed, but couldn't. There was something in her tone that made the moment too alive to ruin. As she stepped out into the rain, she turned back once, like she wanted to say something but changed her mind. When the door closed, I realized my hands were trembling, not from what she'd said, but from everything she hadn't. She came back on a Thursday. I remember because Thursdays are usually slow, and I'd already swept the same corner of the shop twice, trying not to think about whether she would. The doorbell chimed, that same delicate sound, and there she was, carrying a small clock this time. "It's not keeping time," she said simply, placing it on the counter. "Maybe it just needs a little patience." She smiled faintly after saying that, as if catching herself revealing too much. I could tell she wasn't used to being read. I nodded, taking the clock. "Patience fixes more than you'd think." Her gaze lingered on me for a moment before she looked away. She wore her hair tied back today, loosely, with wisps falling around her face. There was something softer about her, or maybe just more tired. Her eyes carried that kind of exhaustion people wear when they've been pretending to be fine for too long. I took the clock apart carefully while she waited, sitting on the stool again, the same one as before. The rain hadn't come this time, but the air felt the same, heavy with something unsaid. "You always this quiet?" she asked suddenly. "Only when I want to listen." "To what?" I hesitated. "People who don't realize how much they're saying without words." She looked at me then, really looked, and I almost regretted saying it. There was a flicker of something in her expression, a tiny crack in the mask she wore. Then, just as quickly, it was gone. "That sounds dangerous," she said softly, echoing her own words from before. I smiled faintly. "Maybe I like dangerous things." Her laugh came out unguarded, quick and warm. It wasn't loud, but it filled the room in a way nothing mechanical ever could. It hit something inside me I didn't know was waiting. "I doubt that," she said. "You strike me as careful. The kind who fixes instead of breaks." "Sometimes fixing means breaking something open first," I murmured, my eyes still on the clock. She didn't respond, but I felt her watching me, that silent attention that feels heavier than touch. Her fingers rested on the counter, just near enough that if I reached out, I could have brushed them. I didn't. She sighed, low and almost private. "You know what's funny?" she said after a long pause. "Things stop working not because they're old, but because someone stopped caring for them." The way she said it, like it wasn't about the clock, made my throat tighten. "Maybe," I said quietly, "some things are just waiting for someone new to care." Her hand froze on the counter. She didn't look up. For a moment, all I could hear was the ticking, soft, uneven, like the clock was trying to catch its breath. When she finally stood to leave, I followed her to the door. She thanked me without meeting my eyes, her voice low but trembling on the edges. Outside, the sun had already dipped low, and the glass reflected her face, calm, distant, unreadable, but her fingers clutched the strap of her bag too tightly. It happened one evening after closing. The rain had returned, not the soft kind, but the kind that made the world sound far away. I'd stayed late to finish an order, the shop dim except for the yellow light above the counter. I didn't expect her to come, but she did. She appeared in the doorway, umbrella dripping, coat pulled tight around her. Her hair was damp, and a faint trace of perfume, something floral but quiet, mixed with the smell of dust and oil. "Sorry," she said, brushing rain from her sleeves. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "You're not interrupting." I turned off the soldering iron, trying to steady my voice. "You shouldn't be out in this weather." I couldn't sleep. She hesitated before stepping further inside. "The radio's fine, by the way. It works perfectly now. I just wanted to tell you that." That wasn't the reason, though. I could feel it. I motioned for her to sit, and she did. The same stool again, as if it had been waiting for her. The rain rattled harder against the windows. "You sure you're okay?" I asked. She smiled faintly, but her eyes betrayed her. "Some nights feel longer than they should." I nodded, not pushing it. I poured her some coffee from the old thermos on the shelf. It was bitter, probably cold, but she took it anyway. Her hands shook slightly as she wrapped them around the mug. We talked about nothing, small things, the weather, her work. She told me she used to teach literature, but left a few years ago. "Too many young faces," she said with a tired laugh. "They remind you of what you've lost." I wanted to tell her she hadn't lost anything, that she was the most alive person I'd met in years. But I didn't. There was a silence after that, thick but not uncomfortable, the kind that hums beneath your ribs. She leaned her chin on her hand, eyes half closed. "You ever feel like you're standing too close to something you shouldn't touch?" she asked suddenly. Her words landed between us like a spark. I didn't answer right away. I didn't need to. The look in her eyes told me she already knew. I took a slow breath. All the time. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. A drop of rain slid down the glass behind her, cutting a path through the reflection of her face, fractured, blurred, beautiful. Then her phone buzzed. The sound broke whatever had been building. She fumbled for it, glancing at the screen. Her whole expression changed. Not fear, not surprise. Just the weariness of someone reminded of the life waiting outside this moment. "Excuse me," she whispered, turning away slightly. Her voice softened when she answered. "Yes, I told you not to call this late." A pause. "No, it doesn't matter anymore." I pretended to busy myself with the counter, but I could still hear the tremor in her tone. Something raw, almost pleading, buried beneath her composure. When she hung up, she didn't look at me right away. Her fingers tightened around the coffee mug, knuckles pale. "Old life?" I asked quietly. She nodded. "Something like that." We didn't speak after that. The rain filled the silence again. I could feel her wanting to say something, and maybe I wanted to hear it too much. When she finally stood, I walked her to the door. The storm outside was relentless. She hesitated at the threshold, umbrella half open. Her hand brushed mine as she took it from me. Just a touch, but enough to leave my pulse unsteady. She looked up, met my eyes for one breath too long. Then she said, almost under her breath, "You shouldn't wait for people like me." She didn't come for a week. The shop felt hollow without her, like the silence had teeth. Every creak, every hum of the fluorescent light above the counter reminded me of the space she used to fill. I told myself it was for the best. That maybe the rain, the late-night coffee, the quiet confessions, they'd all been accidents of timing. Nothing more. But on the seventh evening, she walked in again. No umbrella this time. Just her, soaked from the drizzle, eyes red around the edges. She didn't bother with small talk. Just said, "You still here?" as if she wasn't sure I would be. "I'm always here," I said. She gave a small, humorless laugh. "That's what worries me." She looked different tonight, not composed like before. Her hair was messy, her coat half unbuttoned. She set her bag down on the counter and exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath all week. I didn't ask what was wrong. I just waited. For a while, we stood there in that dim light, listening to the hum of the rain outside. Then, almost suddenly, she said, "I shouldn't be here." My throat tightened. "Then why are you?" She hesitated. Her eyes flicked to mine, then away again. "Because I don't like how quiet it gets when I'm not." I didn't move. I didn't speak. The words hung between us like heat. She leaned on the counter, elbows braced, staring at the small radio sitting near my tools, the one I'd fixed for her weeks ago. "You ever start something you don't have a name for?" I swallowed. "Every day since you walked in." That made her look up. Her face softened, then tensed. like she was fighting something invisible. "Don't," she said quietly. "Don't make this real. It already is." The words left me before I could stop them. They didn't sound like mine. Too bare, too close to the truth. She closed her eyes, exhaling through her nose. "You're young," she whispered. "You still think everything broken can be repaired if you just care enough. And you've stopped believing that. I've learned that fixing things means breaking something else." We both went quiet. The sound of rain thickened, a low, steady murmur against the windows. I wanted to reach for her, not to pull her closer, but to anchor her somehow, to keep her from disappearing again into whatever she was running from. Instead, I said, "I don't know what this is." Her voice came back, softer, trembling. "Neither do I." We just stood there, two people who'd said too much without saying anything at all. The kind of silence that doesn't end when words return. After a long moment, she reached for her bag. "You should forget I came tonight." "I won't," I said. She froze at the door. For a second, I thought she'd turn around. But she didn't. She only said, without facing me, "Then you'll regret it." It had been 2 weeks since that night. 2 weeks of pretending to forget her voice, the smell of rain on her coat, the way her words had hovered in the air like static. I threw myself into work. Longer hours, more repairs, anything that made the clock move faster. But even then, sometimes I'd look up at the door, half expecting her to walk in again. And then, one afternoon, she did. No warning, no pretense. Just her, standing in the doorway, sunlight spilling behind her like she'd brought a different kind of weather. She looked calmer, maybe even determined, but her eyes carried something else. "Oh wait, can we talk?" she asked quietly. I nodded, trying to mask the tremor in my chest. She didn't sit this time. Instead, she walked to the counter, set down a small, folded photograph, and stepped back like it burned to touch it. I looked at it. A man smiling. Her age. Arm around a woman who looked a lot like her. Only younger, happier, lighter somehow. "That was my husband," she said. Her voice didn't break. It was too practiced for that. "He died 8 years ago. Heart attack. Just gone. One morning, he said he'd be home by 6, and he never was." I said nothing. What could I? She continued, quietly, almost as if she wasn't talking to me at all. "Since then, I've avoided everything that felt alive. People, places, conversations that last too long." She looked at me now, really looked. "And then you came along with your quiet questions and steady hands, and suddenly I didn't know how to breathe again." My chest tightened, not from guilt, not exactly, but from the realization that I'd walked into something sacred without knowing it. She reached out, fingertips brushing the counter's edge. "You remind me of him," she said softly. "Not how you look, just the way you listen, the way you care about small things. He used to fix things, too." Her words landed like a confession and a wound at once. I didn't know what to say. Every answer felt wrong. Too big, too simple, too dangerous. Instead, I just asked, "Why tell me this now?" She gave a fragile half-smile. "Because it's unfair to let someone carry ghosts they didn't meet." I stared at the photo. The man's smile seemed distant now, unreachable. "You still love him?" I said quietly. She nodded. "Of course. But lately," she stopped herself. "Look down. Lately, I've been afraid I'm starting to love something else. And I don't know what to do with that." For a second, the room didn't feel real. Just the hum of the ceiling fan, the scent of dust and coffee, her breath catching as if she wished she could swallow the words back. I wanted to step closer, but I didn't. The air between us was too fragile to move through. Instead, I picked up the photograph, held it for a moment, and placed it gently back where it had been. "You don't have to stop loving him," I said quietly. "You just have to let yourself exist after him." She closed her eyes, and for the first time, a tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. The next time she came, she didn't bring anything to be fixed. No clock, no radio, not even an excuse. Just herself, standing in the doorway like someone who'd run out of reasons to stay away. The shop was nearly empty. Evening light stretched across the floor in soft gold ribbons, and the air smelled faintly of rain again, the way it had that first day. "I didn't know where else to go," she said quietly. "You came here," I replied. "That's enough." She smiled, tired but real this time. You always say the right thing without knowing what it means. I didn't answer. She walked past the counter, moving slowly, tracing her fingers along the same shelves she'd once studied weeks ago. Dust had gathered there again. Time always finds a way to return to places we leave behind. When she turned to face me, something had shifted in her. She wasn't guarded anymore. She looked resolved. Not peaceful, not yet, but open in a way that made it hard to breathe. I listened to the radio last night, she said. The same one you fixed. It played one of his old favorite songs. I thought it would hurt. It didn't. I took a step closer, careful, like every inch mattered. Maybe that's what healing feels like. Her lips twitched into something like a smile, but her eyes stayed wet. Or maybe it's just forgetting. Then let it be forgetting, I said softly, as long as it's yours to choose. She stared at me, that long, wordless kind of stare that feels heavier than anything spoken. Then she shook her head, almost in disbelief. You don't understand what this is. I don't have to, I said. I just know I don't want to undo it. For a long while, neither of us moved. The light dimmed around us, the faint hum of the ceiling fan filling the silence. It was strange, how still the world could feel when everything inside you was trembling. Finally, she crossed the distance. Slowly, carefully. Her hand brushed mine as she passed, the softest touch, enough to quiet every thought. She sat on the stool, the same one that had seen every version of us. Cautious strangers, hesitant friends, something else neither of us dared name. I don't know what happens next, she whispered. Maybe nothing, I said. Maybe this is all it ever needs to be. She exhaled, and in that breath was something close to surrender. I sat across from her, close enough to feel her warmth, far enough not to mistake it for promise. The radio on the shelf buzzed faintly, static and song merging into something half lost. We listened without speaking, the kind of silence that says everything both of us were too afraid to. After a while, she leaned forward just slightly, her forehead resting against my shoulder. Not an embrace, not possession, just acknowledgement. Her voice came out small, almost breaking. Thank you for letting me remember what it feels like to be seen. I didn't answer. My hand found hers, open, trembling, waiting, and I held it the way you'd hold something you know you'll have to let go of soon. It's been almost a year since the last time I saw her. Sometimes, I still catch myself glancing at the shop door when the bell rings, expecting to see that same calm face, that steady kind of presence that never needed to announce itself. But it's never her. Just strangers with broken things and ordinary stories. She left quietly. No dramatic goodbye, no long look over her shoulder. Just a message on a scrap of paper tucked under the radio I'd fixed for her months before. You helped me remember I'm still alive. I kept that note. It sits folded in the drawer beside the tools I use every day, not as a wound, but as proof that sometimes love isn't about having someone. It's about being changed by them. In the weeks after she left, the shop felt heavier, like the air itself remembered her voice. But over time, that weight turned into something else, a warmth that lingered instead of ache. I started noticing things I'd missed before. The way the afternoon light bends across the counter. The hum of machines when the world goes quiet. The way people carry pieces of their lives in for repair, sometimes hoping I can fix more than what's broken on the surface. Maybe that's what she taught me most. How to see what isn't being said. How to listen without needing to answer. I still don't know if what we shared counts as love. Maybe it was too quiet for that word, too short-lived, too sacred. But whatever it was, it stayed. It became a part of me in ways words can't reach. I think about her sometimes when I pass by the bookstore near the old market. She once told me she loved that place because every unread book was a life waiting to be lived. I wonder if she ever bought one after leaving. If she's somewhere new, breathing a little easier now. People ask why I don't talk much, why I always seem lost in thought. I don't tell them that sometimes silence feels like her voice, patient, certain, kind. We never said goodbye. Maybe we didn't have to. Some stories aren't meant to end. They just settle into you, quietly, until you can't tell where they stop and you begin. I like to think that if she ever walks by this street again, she'll pause for a second. Not to come in, not to relive anything. just to smile at the thought of what once was. And maybe, just maybe, she'll know I never forgot her. Because I didn't. I never could.